Here we are, Carolyn.
It certainly will be great to see John again. I haven't seen him since he hurried off to the Bahamas. Then I picked up the papers yesterday to read he's been back in town 4 months.
But he's only been out of hospital 3 weeks.
And when I read in the papers that he was married, I just had to come over and introduce myself to you. You know, Janice, your husband and I have been friends for years.
Oh, I don't imagine he's locked the door. Now, there.
As a matter of fact, people used to tease John, saying he and I were childhood sweethearts.
Then he will be surprised to see you.
Janice! Janice!
What's the matter?
It's John. Look.
John.
He's dead, Janice.
You say, Mrs. Samuels, that you and your husband have only been married 2 weeks?
Yes, Inspector. We were married as soon as he came out of the hospital. I met him overseas about a year ago.
Then you wouldn't know if this suicide note was authentic?
No, Inspector. I've never had more than a couple of letters from him. It was shortly after we met he had the accident.
Oh, it's John's writing, all right, Inspector. I have quite a few of his letters at home, if you'd care to check.
Then you and Mr. Samuels were old friends?
For years. When I read he was back in town, and a new groom, I dashed right over to his wife's office and introduced myself. Janice and I thought we'd surprise him when I came home with her.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind saying, ladies, that this looks too much like suicide.
I don't understand, Inspector.
Everything seems too pat. Mrs. Samuels, was your husband worried or upset about anything?
Oh, no. Everything's been just grand. We were making plans. John seemed so happy when we discussed his new career.
New career?
Yes. He was planning to go on studying law.
What about all his art training?
Well, the accident has changed all that. He had no use of the fingers on his right hand. Naturally, that put an end to his art career.
That's it, Inspector. Don't you see? That's John's motive for suicide.
Mrs. Samuels, did any of your husband's friends know of this new handicap?
Why, yes. All of John's friends went to see him in the hospital. They were all for his decision to study law. I just can't understand this. Everything was so perfect. He was so...
Your husband didn't commit suicide, Mrs. Samuels.
What? Didn't?
He was murdered, and by Carolyn.
Inspector, that's ridiculous. I couldn't have killed John. Today's the first time I've seen him in years.
This is the second time today you've seen him, Carolyn. The first time you killed him.
That's not true.
Then how did you know where his wife worked when you had never met her before? I'll tell you how. John told you before you killed him out of jealousy. Then you went downtown to meet Janice and establish your alibi. But you weren't observant enough in your first visit to notice his paralyzed fingers, the result of the accident he was in while he was away. And being the only old friend of his who didn't know of it, you forged a suicide note, later swearing it to be his writing. Even if he'd learned to write left-handed while in the hospital, the writing would be entirely different from anything he'd written in previous years with his right hand.